John F. Kennedy Jr. is now presumed dead. After the plane crash near Martha's Vineyard, Kennedy was 38.
On the 16th of July, 1999, John F. Kennedy Jr., his wife, Carolyn Bessette, and her sister, Lauren Bessette, vanished while flying in Kennedy Jr.'s plane from New Jersey to Martha's Vineyard to attend a family wedding.
Our thoughts and prayers are with the families of John Kennedy and Carolyn and Lauren Bessette.
Over the following week, the U.S. Coast Guard, Navy, and local authorities engaged in an intensive search, scouring the waters off the coast for signs of life.
I just can't believe it. I just wasn't wishing it was true. I wish it was a bad dream.
I feel bad for the wife's family, the Bessettes. You don't see much on the news about them. They're more focused on what happened to the Kennedys.
I just wish they really were alive. They're just so young.
ITN covered the unfolding search closely, reporting on a story that drew widespread international interest. This is how it was reported.
Dawn this morning at the Kennedy compound on Cape Cod, the marquee that was to have been the setting for a joyous family wedding yesterday still stood on the lawn. The priest who was to have officiated stood instead under the canvas to conduct mass, the family being led in prayer by John's uncle, Senator Edward Kennedy. Most of the family are gathered here in Hyannisport and are staying together now, guarded by the police from the crowds of press and public gathered outside, saying nothing until their worst fears are officially confirmed. In Washington, the president said all three of the missing were in his prayers and then paid fulsome tribute to the family that has suffered so much tragedy.
For more than 40 years now, the Kennedy family has inspired Americans to public service, strengthened our faith in the future, and moved our nation forward. Through it all, they have suffered much and given more.
There has been no let-up today in the air and sea search for the remains of the aircraft, and with it, the bodies of its three occupants. Naval vessels have been brought in to search the ocean bed. On the island of Martha's Vineyard, police using all-terrain vehicles are scouring beaches for more debris that may be washed ashore. But so far, nothing. Those who live on Cape Cod treat the Kennedys as their own and are taking this tragedy very personally.
I just can't believe it. I just wasn't wishing it was true. I wish it was a bad dream. That's how bad it is.
We're surprised and dismayed. These things are not supposed to happen in Camelot.
But they do all too often to this family. Led by John's aunt, Ethel Kennedy, a small group of relatives returned to the compound a short time ago. Yet again, the Kennedys are mourning the deaths at a tragically early age of two more of their number. His father was assassinated. His brother died just a few days old. One uncle was killed in the war. A second, Robert Kennedy, was also murdered. Two cousins, both sons of Roberts, died tragically young. And now it seems that John Jr., the last great hope of the Kennedy clan, is gone too. James Mates, ITN, in the United States.
Day 2 of the search began at dawn. It had been suspended overnight. Officials say there's no question of abandoning the operation, but as the hours go by, any remaining hope is diminishing. Some wreckage and luggage belonging to the Kennedy party has washed up, but there's no sign of John Jr., his wife Carolyn, or her sister Lauren. Their personal belongings were recovered by people on a trip to the beach.
He swam out, grabbed the luggage, pulled it in, and we all gathered and looked at the name tag and saw that it was Lauren Bessette's name tag, and from there, we just called the police.
The Kennedy family has faced tragedy all too often in the past. Prayers were being said for John Kennedy Jr. right across the land. The Kennedy clan are gathered at Hyannisport in Massachusetts. John Kennedy Jr. had been flying his plane there for a wedding. Now the family may have to come to terms with another Kennedy funeral.
It's just terrible. It just keeps going on. I could not believe it, that it would happen again. It's like we just kept thinking they'd find him.
The authorities say they have planes and search teams, but they still don't know where to look.
Until a specific location is pinpointed where divers could be directed, we do not have a mission for these people as of yet.
At John Jr.'s New York home, he's also being remembered.
He had all this fame, and he just seemed to handle it with such grace and dignity, you know. And he was just a regular guy.
To see him a lot around at the neighborhood and seemed like a normal guy.
But 3 days after their disappearance, officials confirmed what many had feared. While the search continued, it was no longer a rescue effort.
There has been no let-up in the air and sea search in the waters off Martha's Vineyard. The difference now is that this is no longer a search and rescue operation, it is search and recovery. Any hope of finding John F. Kennedy Jr., his wife and sister-in-law alive has gone. US Navy vessels are arriving today to locate the wreckage and it's hoped recover the bodies. The families were told officially last night that the three are now missing, presumed dead. President Clinton was also informed, he spoke this morning, of the feeling of national loss.
And our thoughts and prayers are with the families of John Kennedy and Carolyn and Lauren Bessette. It is at times like this that we really stop to recognize that as big and diverse as our country is, we can come together as a national family.
As to what happened, there are only theories. John Kennedy was described as a good pilot, though not an experienced one. He had learned to fly in this Cessna, though recently had upgraded to the more powerful and harder to handle Piper Saratoga. Those who know the skies around Long Island believe pilot disorientation in the haze and half-light of Friday evening is the most likely cause. At the Cape Cod memorial to his father, President Kennedy, flowers are being laid and prayers said for a son who had promised so much.
It's like the nation lost a son. That's how I feel, is that the nation lost a son.
It doesn't seem fair, you know, for one family to have gone through so much. It's not fair.
John F. Kennedy Jr. is now presumed dead. After the plane crash near Martha's Vineyard, Kennedy was 38.
The NTSB says it will release a complete list of recovered items today, but we know already that it includes these things: foam insulation from the Kennedy plane, a headrest, part of a foot pedal, part of the landing gear, some luggage, and a prescription bottle belonging to Carolyn Bessette Kennedy.
There is only one story in America today, and in a way it's a story which has run for over 30 years. It's a Great Gatsby-style tale of early death and lost potential, with John Kennedy Jr. as its latest victim.
I miss his not being here anymore. I do miss the fact that he didn't really have a chance to live out his years and accomplish what either he or fate may have had in store for him. I had hoped perhaps there might be a return to the days of Camelot when the country was brought together.
I just wish that they were alive. I just wish they really were alive. They're just so young. And it was sad when his father passed away, and we had to hear it.
What do they represent, do you think, for you? Is it a kind of hope, or sort of idealism?
No, they're just human beings who just, I think, want to have a good life just like anybody else and enjoy life. And that family's been plagued and they get through it, and maybe that gives the rest of us hope.
The search and rescue operation has now turned into a recovery mission as the Kennedys wait for news in their Hyannisport compound. It's a curious, haunted place where the spirits of America's founding fathers merge in the summer haze with today's voyeuristic celebrity culture. In death as in life, John Kennedy Jr.'s every moment has been caught on camera, as if trapped in a real-life version of The Truman Show.
People that were coming into the museum today, they feel that they've been robbed of the opportunity to see him create a new generation for his particular family and to be able to watch him for the next 40 to 50 years. I personally have a little bit of hard time with participating here today. It happens to this family over and over and over again. They're living in an absolute fishbowl, and to me, that has to be, I just find a sadness to them.
I feel bad for the wife's family, the Bessettes. You don't see much on the news about them. They're more focused on what happened to the Kennedys. And I think it should be more 50-50 than just, 80 Kennedy and 20% Bessette.
But the Kennedy name still enchants Americans. John Jr. and his late wife Carolyn shared a name, a brand name even, which every presidential candidate wants to have on their side. Some of that glamour has faded in recent years, dulled by tabloid scandal. So what exactly are people going to miss?
Do people need the Kennedys? After all, there are lots of Kennedy surrogates in American politics. One of them's in the White House.
Well, do people need the Kennedys? I don't think people need the Kennedys, but people need something to cling to. You know, people need memories. They need these types of things. People need goals. People need people to look up to. People need people to admire. I mean, that's just the way we are.
Tonight, the search continues for the lost children of two families. The Bessettes are grieving for two of their three daughters. The oldest, Lauren, leaves behind her twin sister. John Kennedy Jr. is being remembered as a celebrity rather than as a political figure, although these days in America, it's hard to tell the difference. The authorities say it'll take 6, even 9 months to make sense of what happened to his plane. But his early death, and that of his wife and sister-in-law, will ensure the Kennedy myth continues, albeit in a minor key, for another generation. Peter Morgan, Channel 4 News, outside the Kennedy compound, Hyannisport.
Within days, crews found the plane's wreckage and the remains of all 3 passengers.
As word came that the wreckage of John F. Kennedy's plane and the bodies of its 3 occupants had been found, Senator Edward Kennedy left his Cape Cod home to be taken by the Coast Guard to the scene of the operation. He was to be briefed on the latest developments. It's expected that when the bodies are brought to the surface, he will be asked formally to identify that of his nephew. It was a remote diving vehicle equipped with a robotic camera that made the breakthrough last night. Divers have spent all day in the water today preparing to bring the wreckage to the surface. But as these pictures released by the Navy show, they are working at depths of more than 100 feet, in visibility of less than 8 feet, and battling strong tidal currents.
30 seconds into the maneuver, the airplane started a turn to the right and descended at a rapid rate of descent. The rate of descent may have been greater than 5,000 feet per minute.
News of the discovery of the bodies came just as the president was giving a press conference here in Washington. He used it to reminisce about how a year ago he'd invited John Kennedy back to the White House for the first time since his father was assassinated.
Especially in light of everything that's happened, I'm glad he had the chance to come back here one more time and see the residents and know where he was when he was a little boy. I'm glad he did that. I'm grateful that that happened.
It has been announced, though, that there will be a private memorial service for John Kennedy and his wife at the Church of St. Thomas More in New York City on Friday morning. James Mates, ITN, in the United States.
The memorial ceremony attracted numerous well-known figures, and honouring the family's wishes focused on celebrating the lives of Kennedy Jr. and the Bessette sisters, rather than mourning their deaths.
It was to be not a memorial service, but a celebration of the lives of John and Carolyn Kennedy. Their families were gathering today exactly a week after the fatal crash, the Kennedy clan saying goodbye to the man in whom so many of their hopes for the future had rested. At the request of John's sister Caroline, they had chosen the church where their mother Jackie Onassis had worshipped. The president, wife Hillary and daughter Chelsea, friends of the family, slipped quietly in through a side entrance. In contrast to the privacy of today's service, New York's Irish community had last night held a public memorial mass at the city's old St. Patrick's Cathedral.
But never, never have I had to minister to a family who has suffered all of these agonies, and often many times over, like the Kennedy family has done.
The family left this morning's service, its members heading their separate ways once again. How often now they've been brought together only to mourn the loss of another of their number. There will be a separate memorial service for John Kennedy's sister-in-law, Lauren Bessette, near her home in Connecticut tomorrow night. James Mates, ITN, New York.